What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch here with another NFL draft needs video. In this video, the AFC North, the Steelers, the Bengals, the Browns, and the Ravens. My view at their draft and which positions they should look to pick in this year's 2022 NFL draft. If that sounds good to you, don't forget to spike that like button to help out with the YouTube algorithm, as well as subscribing to the channel for more BLV NFL content just like this and plenty more NFL draft coverage. I cover all 32 teams on this channel, so make sure you do subscribe. Let's begin the draft needs vid with the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are looking to bounce back this season, looking to add some positions of need. And the Baltimore Ravens, I would say, roster-wise, are a little bit weaker than years past. But I view some of their needs as kind of clear and obvious, to be honest with you. I feel like for the Ravens, center is a clear need this year. Wide receiver depth is definitely on the list of needs. Corner depth is on the list of needs. Linebacker upgrade and just youth on the D-line, period. I feel like more with the Ravens, it's about the depth of most positions. Outside of really center, where you could look to add a true starter, I feel like corner is like nickel corner / third, fourth corner. Wide receiver is like third receiver, that sort of deal with the Ravens. So they're in a good position at the top of a lot of positions with their depth chart. Like D-line was a concern until you re-signed Calais Campbell. But now you got this year, short term, Calais Campbell, Michael Pierce, Derek Wolfe. So you're fine. But that's a really old position, right? It's three good players, but they're all old. So you're looking to add some youth there to a position that the Ravens typically covet. Edge is not the strongest, but you've already spent first round pick on Oweh, who's developing, and then Tyus Bowser, who's underrated, and then Jalen Ferguson's the third round pick from 2019, who's a solid player. So it's like you're not looking to add a first or second rounder, maybe a second rounder, but probably not a first a year after you spent a first on that same position. Corner, you're getting older with Marcus Peters, but you lost two corners in Averett and in Tavon Young. So you're looking to add probably a third or a fourth guy in that line, but you did solve safety with Marcus Williams. So that's huge. So you can kind of take that off the checklist, so to speak. So the Ravens are in a good spot though. So really, what would I do in the first round? I mean, I never hate going after receivers, especially in the range that the Ravens are going to pick. They could potentially land the first or second best receiver in this draft. I understand that they chose a receiver in the first round of 2021, so that might be a little bit much, just as I said with edge. But again, getting another weapon for Lamar Jackson, I don't think is a terrible idea, unless they like somebody like a Duvernay, but I haven't really seen them be too high on him. And Tylan Wallace, I don't know if they love him either, but those are like mid-round picks from years past. Center could be a clear area to address here, especially because you're the Ravens and you're a team that loves to run the football. So a center could be high priority, especially because you lost your starter from a year ago with Bradley Bozeman. Running back, maybe depth later in the draft just because you're the Ravens. Again, you love that running back depth. But honestly, Morgan Moses, I don't think you're really looking to address right tackle right away. Left tackle's good. Guard is, I think, fine. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if they picked one early, but I don't think they need to necessarily. So maybe difference maker on defense. Like that's maybe where this is a bit of a luxury pick, where if one of the better pass rushers comes to you, maybe you pick him. Again, scheme change could definitely indicate that move. Maybe linebacker could be a place that you address. I definitely think that's a need, but they haven't really spent a lot of capital there in recent years outside of Patrick Queen. So maybe they look to add linebacker. Maybe they get the best linebacker in the draft with their first pick, which I believe is 14th overall. So yeah, their first round pick is really tricky. I could see them going a number of different directions. Like center kind of feels a little bit too pricey in the top half of the first round. Linebacker could certainly be there. Edge could certainly be there. Even corner potentially. But I don't think that you need a top 2 corner. So, yeah, it's real tricky, honestly. But I do view these positions as being clear and obvious to address. Center, D-line, linebacker, wide receiver, and corner. But as I've said throughout this already, I feel like the Ravens kind of have enough talent and enough depth to be able to be flexible with best player available at those specific positions. So in the draft, try to address those positions if you're the Ravens, but they have enough flexibility with the players already on their roster to be able to address it in any given point. But just thinking about it, I do feel like edge, I was getting maybe a little bit ahead of myself. I could see that maybe in the first round, just given the strength of the position. But I would really love to see another receiver. I really would. Let me know, Ravens fans, what you guys think. But yeah, those are certainly the positions that I think. Linebacker is going to be probably mid-rounds. Wide receiver, center, D-line. D-line will probably be later, 4th, 5th round, to try to add some youth to an older position. But I don't think it's like an apparent right now type of need. Let me know, Ravens fans, what you guys think. Moving on to the next team is the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals are kind of like the Ravens, where they're in a position where they've addressed a lot of their needs already throughout free agency. Their offensive line was their biggest need by a mile. They addressed it with Collins at right tackle, Kappa at right guard, and Karras at center. So now they're in a great spot. Jackson Carman is going to be their left guard, 2nd round 2021. He was okay as a rookie. I mean, you look for progression there. I don't think they're going to look to add that early in the draft because they spent a 2nd round on him last year. Wide receiver is clearly not a need. Running back is not a need early in the draft. Tight end, there's nothing really to add there in the 1st round. You know, Hayden Hurst is a capable starting tight end. Obviously, you got Joe Burrow. But I could see just the best defensive player. That's what I think the Bengals are going to look to address early. And they have the luxury of having all their picks and having already addressed all the offensive line needs to not have to be forced into a corner of picking an offensive lineman. So that's fantastic what they were able to do in free agency. So I could see them picking an edge player. I could see them picking probably not an interior defensive lineman. I think DJ Reed and BJ Hill is a great combo. I don't think they need necessarily to pick one in the 1st. You could see maybe like 4th, 3rd round for them to pick an interior defensive lineman just as depth, because they do need depth there, but they don't need a starter. Linebacker beside Logan Wilson could be a position that they look to add, but they typically don't value that with high priority, right? Pratt and Wilson were both 3rd round picks. Corner could certainly be a position to replace Eli Apple at perimeter corner, could be their 1st round pick. Chidobe Awuzie was good last year. Mike Hilton is a good player, but they could look to move Eli Apple more towards a depth role and then add a rookie as their 2nd perimeter corner, which would really beef up their secondary. And like I said with the AFC East, with the Buffalo Bills, they're in a position where they're competing for that AFC Championship. They're competing for that Super Bowl. So the Bengals need to look at their competition and look at how many teams in the AFC are pass happy and have great quarterbacks. So adding a corner could be real huge for them. So I would look corner in the 1st round, or maybe edge, like just a player that can impact the passing game on defense, either way. And then later in the draft, I'd look towards linebacker, and then maybe defensive line 4th round, right? So like corner, edge, D-line, that sort of deal. Let me know, Bengals fans, what you guys think, but that's how I see it. I don't see them going very much on offense. I think it's going to be primarily used on beefing their defense up to trying to compete against the top offenses of the AFC. Next team is the Cleveland Browns. Now, the Cleveland Browns don't have a ton of picks, but for a team that traded a lot of their picks away, they still have a few. right, to flirt with a little bit. So the Browns, unlike the Bengals and the Ravens, where it's more so depth concerns and potentially down the road concerns for them, the Browns more so have clear and evident needs, where it's like you clearly need a number 2 receiver. Like, it's obvious, it's clear as day. So wide receiver is going to be one of their top picks without a doubt. Center could be one of their picks, maybe, depending on how they feel about Ethan Pochich or Nick Harris. Or they could maybe address that down the road in the draft. But I look at D-line and edge as definitely points of emphasis. I know that the Browns don't really put a ton of value in D-line, interior D linemen, but they should, because that is probably their biggest need on their football team outside of second wide receiver, because they really don't have anybody that's special at all. Or even really starting caliber. I mean, maybe Jordan Elliott could become that, but I'm not sure. You're thinking that Jadeveon Clowney is coming back, so I'm going to just assume that, right? Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney with Chase Winovich and Curtis Weaver. That's not bad. Like, that's pretty good, honestly, if you could get Clowney in there for a year, but maybe you're looking for an edge player to hopefully replace Clowney next year or the year after, right? So edge could certainly be realistic early in the draft, as well as wide receiver. Those would be the positions. And then D-line, D-line, D-line. But everywhere else, I think you're good, honestly. So with the few picks that you have, the needs are obvious. Wide receiver, D-line, edge, center, and then maybe depth at safety. But, that's about it. Linebacker, you kind of addressed that already. Quarterbacks obviously addressed. So I think I think the Browns are in a solid spot as well. They've got a talented roster, but I have never seen a depth chart like this in my life where they only have 6 D linemen. There's so much blank space on their depth chart. It's insane on the D line. But thinking that they're getting Jadeveon Clowney down the road here, he's going to sign eventually. But, thinking like an NFL team, you got to get youth at that position for the long-term stability. So, edge, wide receiver, those are the 2 top needs, and I think they will address them with the picks that they have. And the final team in the AFC North is the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers clearly have the worst roster in this division, and clearly have the roster that has the most holes and areas where they could address in this draft. Now, they do have quite a few picks that they could utilize. Offensive line is going to be the area that I think they address the most. I think tackle is still huge for them, especially left tackle. I would look for them to address that position early, potentially first round type deal. Or center could also be a position that they look to add in the first round. I don't think Mason Cole is going to be the guy, especially long term. Maybe he's a bridge type of center for a year. Safety is another position that they could look to complement Minkah Fitzpatrick with, but I don't think they're going to look for that in the first round. I would be a little surprised, although that's typically where the safeties start to go, is around that range. So they could kind of have their pick of the litter that way. Corner, they don't really value in that way, so I wouldn't expect them to put a corner in the first round. That would probably be a mid-round need. D-line, I think, can be shelved for a year because Tuitt, Hayward, Alualu, Wormley, that's enough depth there where I'm not concerned short term, but you do need to get younger there for the future. So I think if they were to pick a D lineman in the first round, I'd be slightly surprised. Even though they are older at that position, I think that wouldn't be the way to go. I would go offensive line in the first round if you could. But, we'll see. I think Pittsburgh could also use a receiver for the first time in a couple years. They did sign Steven Sims and Anthony Miller, which is interesting as potentially their number 3, which wouldn't be awful. But I wouldn't be shocked to see them address wide receiver in the second or third round either, given their track record at that position of drafting good caliber players. But I think it's offensive line all day, and then looking to upgrade that secondary, and then looking to get younger in the front 7. But that's the way I see the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's the way I see the AFC North. Let me know, AFC North fans, what you guys think in the comment section below. It's Mitch. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to spike that like button and check out the rest of my team needs videos for the NFL Draft. Peace!